and societal function. Now I will explain all these in due course. So let me just go over this again. So we have punishment. You can be condemned to be tattooed. There's a famous tattoo, condemned to the mines. If you get it tattooed onto your body. You also have tattoos property of a certain person. That does happen. But you can understand that if you're property of, that leads also into the cultic, into the religious. You can put on a religious sign in the property of God or something like that. Yeah. You have juridical, religious, aesthetic. There are cultures like ours nowadays where tattoos like what you have on your arm is considered decoration, is considered art, is considered beautiful. And societal is also the inclusion. If you're part of a certain society, being tattooed like the Scythians was the sign of being a warrior or something like that. So you have tribal tattoos in that sense, which make you part of a society. So what we have of antiquity is of course only the viewpoint of the Greeks and the Romans. So you have to consider we're looking at all the cultures I'm telling you about now through the eyes of Greek writers and Roman writers. So we have a focalization which does not do justice in all cases to what is there. The Scythians have not left us any writing at all. They literally, their writing is their tattoos. The only thing we know about them is through the skin and through the animals and through the patterns we have on that skin, and we can see they must have had myths, they must have had lots of stories, but we have no idea, absolutely none, how this works. So this is a very interesting case of reductionism, where the skin is really the last bit that is left. So when looking at tattoos in antiquity through the eyes of ancient Greek writers, for example, we recognize that also from their perspective, this practice was loaded with cultural preconceptions, as their disapproval and misinterpretation of Scythian tattooing practices indicates. What is more, even as far back as late antiquity, we can identify an emerging association of tattooing with sub and counter culture, which in the end converts to mainstream. The Christians liked tattooing crosses on themselves, which originally was subculture or counterculture, but then of course when everybody becomes Christian, this is suddenly mainstream. So you do see. In turn, modern sub and counterculture have appropriated Latin's association with permanence as the frequent use of Latin in modern day tattoos exemplifies. I get about 2 emails a day ask me, can you translate this into Latin? I want this tattoo about that. Yes, I don't know whether this, but honestly they do, or Greek or something. Or they send you something which is wrong and say, can I add any letters to make this right? You know? And it's already on the body, which is not quite good. So, in what follows, we shall showcase a number of these dichotomies and delineate the attitudes towards tattooing apparent in Greek and Roman culture. Can you hear me in the back? Is it loud enough? Yeah? Okay. Sorry, of course not going to the next. So what you see here is the oldest depiction we have of tattooing on Greek pottery. You have the goddess Justice and Injustice fighting. So Justice just gives, so Justice is Dike and Injustice is Adikiais, and she just gives the final blow to Injustice. Now Injustice has these, it's very much enlarged, you can see, has these blobs here, these circles. Now, when I saw this the first time, I said, well, she just has an illness or something like that. But yeah, because you would think it's something like a plague, or it's bad acne or something like that. But then when you start looking at it, you realize that circle is one of the very earliest forms of tattooing, and people have generally assumed that this is a tattoo, that she's the first. And it's interesting that the bad injustice, the bad one, has the tattoo. Yeah? So she's also marked as the foreign, the other, something strange. So tattooing is not something positive in that context. Yes. So, yeah, so this is just the very first. So you sometimes see this depicted as the example for tattoos in Antiquity. We see one other one, but it's very, very small. So let's see what happens. So we talk about punitive tattoos for a moment. They're called notice boards of guilt because they tattoo you on your forehead with wonderful things like thief or traitor or something like that. So whomever you meet has kind of an idea what you're on about. So tattoos were applied in order to punish slaves and criminals. This is actually, I'm sorry to digress all the time, but we have the code for slaves from the French colonies. And if a slave tried to run away, the first time they would brand him with the fleur de lis, with the French sign. The second time they would start cutting off parts of him. But so this idea of branding, of marking people as punishment, gets perpetuated in slavery. So the permanence of tattoos, which were both difficult and dangerous to remove, predestined their punitive function. That's the thing with the tattoo. Once you have it, it's very hard to get rid of. Aetius of Amida, the court physician to the Emperor Justinian, outlined one recipe for tattoo removal in the 6th century after Christ. So you can see it was a topic, how do I get rid of this tattoo? Nowadays you laser them, I believe, there's something to be done. And the idea is basically you take rather unhealthy things, nitro and terebinth and you put them on your skin, and your skin will ulcer away. It will literally eat your skin away. And it hurts terribly. Don't try this at home. Yes. And it hurts terribly until your tattoo is removed. But you can see, you would only really do this in very urgent cases. Yeah? So if you really, really, really want to get rid of your tattoo. There was an interesting study in the United States where I don't know about what you have in Spain. In the United States, they have juries. So you get in front of 12 people, and they have something to say about you. And they made a study and said if somebody shows up with a tattoo, which they can see the jury, they tend to be more strict with these people because they assume, if you have a tattoo, you either have been in prison before or not. So they had one case of somebody who had the face tattooed. So he couldn't hide them. So they paid for his makeup to be done, so they covered it every day, so that he would have a fair trial, because they said it makes such a difference in some cultures. I remember in London, we have a lot of these overpriced coffee shops, like Starbucks and Coffee Bean, you name it, and the staff there is not allowed to show tattoos. So you sometimes come in and they have all these, bandages and badges everywhere. And you go like, what the heck? And then some of them, yes, because you think they have a plague or something, and it's not. And some of them sued them and said it's a form of self-expression. If I have tattoos, it's part of my personality, and I should be allowed to show this, and they won. So nowadays you can show tattoos in Starbucks. But it was an interesting to observe, the prejudice or that they think it's not proper that somebody with tattoos serves you. So the older generation has a lot of issues there. Yes. So that's how to get rid of a tattoo. So these caustic substances we just saw, they would have ulcerated their skin over 20 days, causing excruciating pain. Punitive tattoos were therefore irrevocable signs of ostracism, which even repentance and restitution would not erase. So getting rid of your tattoo would be very hard. Now, a man who had received a K for calumniator on his forehead would be associated with calumny all his life. We even have reference to this. I can see the K on your forehead in Cicero. There's some speeches where he brings it up. Even if he remained silent, the black letter would speak for him, revealing his illicit past to every onlooker. Similarly, a man marked with the explicit fur, it is also perfectly short, it just fits, 3 letters do fit quite well. A practice attested in Plautus would be forever perceived as a thief. So in Plautus they threaten the slave that they will tattoo him with fur. It's not always easy in the Latin passages to know whether they're going to brand them. Branding is what you do with cattle, yeah? Or whether they tattoo them. We always think that when it's letters, they probably tattoo them, but it's not always 100% clear. Punitive tattoos also prevented their bearers from escaping slavery. As a Scolian on Aeschylus suggests, Scolian is an annotation, an ancient annotation that somebody writes in the margins. Miscreant slaves were tattooed with instructions. Stop me, I'm a runaway. Yeah, so when you get to the metro, they already know that you're supposed to be there. Indeed, by marking undesirables without their consent, the state controlled the future relationships and interactions of the person tattooed. And this is why your parents always tell you not to get tattoos, because if you marry Prince Harry, yeah, it's true, you have a problem. It's actually true that we had at this conference, there was somebody who removes tattoos, and he said, he basically told us why people asked to have them removed. And some of them said because it associates me with a certain gang and it's not my life anymore. But others said, I'm going to marry somebody respectable and I can't meet his parents until this is gone. Well, it was very interesting to hear. There was one scholar from California who's half Japanese. He says every time he goes to Japan, he gets checked every 100 meters. Because you could see his tattoos up to here, which is quite rare. Because they automatically associate it with the gang, and it's very, very interesting for us to listen to. So Marshall, that's the next. Marshall writes at the end of the 1st century AD. He writes lots of epigrams and he makes fun of everybody. He pokes fun at a freedman. Freedman is a former slave who has been freed, who desperately attempts to conceal his tattoos. Numerous patches cover his forehead like stars, so he has all these beauty patches on his. For all his efforts, however, his disguise proved so ineffective that he is reduced to an object of mockery. Remove the patches and you will read his name. Trapped within their marked skins, tattooed freedmen remained outcasts throughout their life. In the 3rd century AD, a Christian writer, Pontius, deacon from Carthage, observed so many confessors sealed with a second inscription on their distinguished foreheads. Now, what the hell is he on about? The nice thing is, if you work on tattoos, you get to read people you've never even heard of before. So Pontius is not one of the people you will ever encounter. It's one of the Christian writers. So basically, he says, you all are blessed with the first inscription, with his baptism, which inscribes the cross into your soul. And the second inscription that inscribes the cross on your forehead or somewhere else in the body. So it's the Christian tattoos they make in early Christianity. So the first is the indelible cross of baptism, and the second is a cross-shaped tattoo. In the time of the Emperor Valerian, tattoos, that's mid-3rd century after Christ, Valerian, tattoos had become associated with Christianity. So there's this weird underground sect that tattoos themselves. Punitive tattoos were thus inherently alienating due to their association with deviant sects, such as Christians. So that's another reason why tattooing wasn't well thought of, because outcasts, Christians would do this well. What is more, tattoos were not always forced upon Christians by pagans. We also know that rival Christian sects would tattoo each other punitively. So we have sources where one sect tattoos somebody else with a shameful mark. We don't know what that might be. So they have the sign of the cross. During the reign of the Arian Emperor Valens, an Orthodox deacon was with the sign of the sacred cross inscribed on his forehead. So along with deviance, punitive tattoos also often marked degradation, as they were frequently applied in conjunction with other humiliating punishments. So this is a source from the 1st century AD, and he writes, Suetonius writes, actually 2nd century AD, sorry, but he writes on the Emperor Caligula. Caligula is, so first you have Augustus, then you have, are you hot? I'm hot as well. Thank you. Yes, let's see whether that is good. Shall I open the door? Would that not help?
Yes.
I knew Spain was hot, but I had my glasses that hot. Good. So he writes about the life of Caligula. So the first Roman emperor is Augustus, then comes Tiberius, and then comes Caligula. Caligula is young and dangerous and doesn't last very long, because he's the first emperor who makes quite clear to the Senate that he doesn't need them anymore. He's an absolute power. So they think he wasn't very diplomatic. So they got rid of him after about 4 years. Until then, he did a lot of interesting things, cruel things as well. And he combined punitive tattoos with forced labor by sending noble youth to the mines after marking them with his name. So he first disfigured them with the marks of branding irons, and then Caligula condemned them to the mines. And by doing so, Caligula also expressed his dominance as lord and master of the recently enslaved noble youth. In his description of Egyptian customs, now we're looking into Egypt, Herodotus alleges that any house slave who takes refuge in the sanctuary of Hercules on the Nile and brands himself with sacred marks to signify that he's giving himself up to God cannot be touched, no matter whose slave he was. You will be aware that even nowadays we have something called church sanctuary. So if you seek asylum in a church, they cannot forcefully remove you, at least in most countries. Yeah, okay. And here's something similar. So you have to go to this sanctuary, to this temple of Hercules, but you also have to mark yourself through a tattoo as his property. So here the property marking becomes religious, gets a religious context. These examples suggest that tattoos were perceived as a symbolic method of ownership transfer. Associated with slavery in general, punitive tattoos seemed ever the more degrading. A Roman or Greek in antiquity would have equated tattooing with low social status. So here we have it again for the Greeks. It's always something bad. Greeks and Romans, they don't like it. And in some other cultures, it has a slightly better connotation. We have mummies. I think the BBC seems to have a tattoo person, because BBC has a lot of stories on tattoos. And they found another mummy. They think they now found the oldest tattooed mummy they ever found, which is very simple, kind of stripe tattoos or dot tattoos. But we have lots of tattoos from Egypt. I come to this in a bit. They're mainly religious in Egypt, so that fits to that story of Herodotus. So unpleasant connotations aside, punitive tattoos also caused those who bore them social and economic disadvantages. So according to the Lex Fufia and the Lex Aelia, the first is from 2 before Christ and the second from 4 after Christ, and it means laws, laws issued in Rome. Tattooed slaves, even when released, could never aspire to the rank of citizen. So if you were tattooed, you could never be a Roman citizen. In fact, you can never fly business class when you're tattooed. And they could only become so-called peregrini dedictii, freedmen with no political rights. So they could only ever get 30 miles up to Rome. They were not allowed to enter Rome. There were lots of restrictions just because of these tattoos. But that also tells us that anybody tattooed must have done something wrong originally. Hence, punitive tattoos were not only a painful reminder of servitude or imprisonment, they also represented a barrier to advancement. These social disadvantages were not confined to the Greek and Roman world. Near Eastern societies also practiced punitive tattooing. By the time of the Pentateuch's completion in 400 BCE, 400 before Christ, a strong taboo against tattoos had already developed in Jewish culture. This vehement social stigma is encapsulated in the prohibition, "You shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves." It's Leviticus. I don't think you read this every evening anymore, but that's where we get all the rules from. In addition, the 2nd century AD text, Mishnah, stated that engraving with ink or pigment or anything that leaves an impression was a crime punishable by whipping. Now you can of course now wonder, why is there a Jewish taboo of tattooing? And that shows the cyclical nature of anti-tattoo prejudices. So tattooing first became undesirable due to its historical associations with slavery and idolatry. These very associations then inspired religious invective against tattoos, which featured prominently in rabbinic commentaries. So if you always think that somebody is tattooed, either belongs to a different sect, Egyptian god or something like that, or has been punished for a crime, it makes sense that the Jews say, we don't want to be tattooed. It also put, for me, when in the concentration camps, they all got a number tattooed on them, so that puts that again in a different context. Many people told me that they knew about this Jewish prohibition of being tattooed, but it's not as common knowledge as it used to be. So as tempting as it might seem to read all tattoos as unwanted marks, however, punitive tattoos represent only one part of the picture. As highly appreciated pieces of body art, decorative tattoos also enhance both the status and beauty of their bearers. So we now look at some cultures which are not Greek and Roman, where tattooing was actually either highly appreciated or a mark of honor. So the nomadic Scythians, I can't remember how you pronounce it, but you said it before, yeah? Who roamed the Caucasus, so we are north of the Black Sea region, distinguished themselves through complex and evocative tattoo designs. This warlike people were renowned for their military prowess. As Herodotus reports, the Scythians ruled over inland Asia for 28 years. They invaded Asia on the heels of the Cenarians, who were fleeing before them and caused the end of the Median Empire. So we think of them of a high culture, but a nomadic culture, which has only left traces in tombs you occasionally find. So this is actually a piece of skin, so not a piece of paper. These scenes, so large pieces of skin containing a variety of tattooed scenes, have been preserved from Scythian warriors. I got this material because we got some stuff from the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, where they keep them, and that's why I could take some photos or get the images from the British Museum recently. These scenes reveal that the Scythians' militaristic ethos was reflected in their choice of tattoos. Warriors adorned themselves with bucking horses, striped serpents, and fantastic beasts locked in combat. The interesting thing is this is actually a female. We automatically think it's male, but this is a female mummy. These tattoos are applied to both men and women. I show you a video in a moment, which reveals a female mummy from Scythia with tattoos of mythical creatures and patterns. Actually, I came across this video because I was watching a series on drugs in Antiquity, illicit substances. So, sorry, this is for my next visit, I think. And they were showing this mummy because they made an MRI scan, so they put her into a scanner, and they figured out that she had a large amount of copper in her body on her death. And they were wondering, how does she get, where does the copper come from? And they think it comes from inhaling opium on a copper pan. Now, why was she inhaling opium? Wrong question, I know. No, not for fun. We think at least not for fun. But they figured out that she had cancer and had tumors from the legs up to the spine, and that part of one of the arms had been actually removed in a kind of early operation, so she must have had tumors growing there. And opium, as you will as you might have heard, will recall, I always said, opium is a strong painkiller, of course, as well. So we think she took it, and they knew already that it numbs the pain. So here comes the video. It doesn't have any sound, but you can see that it's a lady who pretends. So this is the mummy, and she now pretends to take photos, but you can see the skin of the tattoos. Okay, here, that's the tattoos. Yeah, this is actually quite. It's quite. I don't know why they pretend that she photographs them. Yeah, this is particularly nice. I show it again a bit slower, but I mean this is really very well preserved. The point is, it's in permafrost, so they have to keep her cool as well. So I show it again to you. You can see here. I think if you can, if it's not too bad, it seems to be. Yeah. Goat. Yeah, it's a goat, exactly. Yeah, that's what I want to say. You can recognize that they have animal. I show to you again. Yeah, when you blow it up and you make it bigger, it doesn't become quite as good. I do it again, and I stop it so you can look at some of the images in piece. If you look at it at my screen, it makes immediate sense. So it's probably just the size of the thing. So here I can't really see much stuff. Okay, here you can see at the bottom something which probably is. Yeah, I go back to the drawing later. Maybe we can identify the bits. But some animal creature, I would think, at the bottom, isn't it? And the. Yeah, here this is again, it's the same bit again. So here, what do we have here? Here you can see that, I think what it is here is you've got one head here, yeah, one going up here, and then I think what you have is one going down from here. But you see that on the drawing. They think she was about 33, which explains why the skin is still quite good, actually. So here you can also see, you see the head of the stag, you would probably say. And that we had before, yeah, that's again the other animal. Okay. So here we have the drawing again. So I think what we have seen was, they didn't show us the leg, they showed us probably some bits of that, and then might have been up the shoulder here or something, or this shoulder here. But what I find interesting is they look incredibly modern, because nowadays if you go to Brazil they all have these sleeve tattoos on the upper body parts. So it's actually quite interesting that it's that old already. What she also has, and we will see them later, are these dot tattoos that they already have. There was somebody pregnant here before. They did very nice tattoos on the abdomen, and when you get pregnant, the pattern changes. So it must be incredibly hard to do when you're not pregnant to get the right, but so it makes better pattern when you're pregnant. It's for fertility. Obviously, you don't need it anymore, but it was interesting for me to learn that they were able to figure out how that works. Yes. So you also learned about opium. Again, don't try this at home. So apart, any questions? Anything? No. Apart from the Scythians, the Thracians, an Eastern European tribe subdued first by the Macedonians. Thracia in Spanish probably Tracia. Yeah. They turn up in Asterix, so it was the ones which had the shoulder blade. Thank you, yeah, good. So they were the first tribe described as having positive attitudes towards tattooing. In Thracian culture, tattoos were so common that somebody, how do you say this in yeah, right. Thank you. I just wonder how you say the PH. Elakostikos, meaning dear tattooed, was used as an epithet. So this is actually an adjective they use for warriors, that he was dear tattooed. Which means if the word for it exists, it must be common enough to happen. According to Herodotus, moreover, they believed that to be tattooed is a sign of noble birth. So here you have the exact opposite from the Greek and Roman culture. The nobles, the wealthy, are the tattooed. You have the same in Mayan culture. I've seen an exhibition on Mayan tattoos recently, and again there it's a noble thing to be tattooed, not a poor. And this quote here, of course, is very interesting in that this gives you a Greek perspective on a foreign practice. They say, oh, they think it's form of ornament. They tattoo their girls, whilst we think, well, others, but it's us, we think it's a form of punishing a criminal. So it's the Greek look on people other than themselves. And this is very much British. So there's a painting in the Victorian era where they imagine Egypt. And this, you will recognize this is Moses in the basket and the show to the daughter of Pharaoh. Okay. So the Thracians adorned themselves with pleasing patterns. Thank you for coming. With pleasing patterns which accentuated their legs, arms, and necks. This is the other vase I can show you from the British Museum, where you have a tattoo if you look very closely. This lady is just about to kill Orpheus, because Orpheus invented pederastry, and so when his wife died, he said, "I will not have another woman in my life." So he went after little boys, which was not very popular with the Thracian women. So they come and kill him. Here's one shown how to spear him. And if you look very closely, she has on her arm, she has a, this is not just a crack, this is a zigzag line, and she has on her neck, she has something similar, but you have to know it's there to see it. I don't think I need it, no, sorry, I can't get it any bigger. And on her foot, down here, there's also a similar zigzag line. So it's pretty simple stuff compared to what we just saw from the Scythians. I had actually at this tattoo conference, people were wondering how they make these full body tattoos without the machines we have nowadays. I mean, it's possible. They had, sorry to digress, I promise I finish at 6, but there's a collection, don't ask me why, when people got condemned to death and decapitated, against a fee, you could get their tattoos from the prison ward, so they would skin them and give them to you, and you could preserve their tattoos in the late 19th century. This is not legal in any way, but we have a rather impressive collection of human skin in London, in the medical collection, and there's somebody doing research on this. And she could even identify some of the victims, because the French police would always photograph everybody they arrested shirtless. So if they had very impressive tattoos, you can trace them. And one of these people photographed there, she could say, this is, you know, we have him under glass here. He had an entire painting on his back. But we don't know how it comes that after his death, and you have to do it pretty soon to preserve the skin. So within days, you know, the skin ended up under glass. We don't want to know, I think. Yeah, but they also said that it's astonishing that you could do this kind of art in entire backs just with needles without the machines. So they wonder how the Thracians did it. Sorry, how the Scythians did it. The Thracians, the zigzag line is not that tricky. They are in Antiquity. We know from Egypt. We know that you can either take a piece of string, color it, and don't try this at home, and sew it through your skin, so that the color stays. It's probably not the nicest thing. We know that they have a lot of so-called aftercare, so they know that this will get infected, so they already tell you what to put on it afterwards and how often to change it. So certain, yes, because they know it's not a good. The other thing is that you have little needles and you just take the pigment and, you know, put it there, which also is not terribly pleasant, but it stays. I don't know. I mean, is it very painful still, or do they? Yeah. It's not okay. It's not okay. Good. So you see, this is just zigzags here, basically. More complex pattern, often inspired by nature, complemented these rudimentary tattoos. Thracian women also accentuated their lithe and agile bodies with silhouettes of animals, especially snakes and does. So we have some more Thracian tattoos as well on vase paintings. So as with Scythians, the Thracians incorporated their warlike ideology into their tattoos. So I've told you already what this woman does. Yes, I can skip that. So this is of course very nice. The Greeks now try to explain this custom of tattooing women. Why the heck would you possibly tattoo a woman? So Pseudo-Plutarch theorized in his Moralia that the Thracians did not tattoo their women out of love, but instead from spite. Nor yet do we commend the Thracians for tattooing their own wives to this day in revenge for Orpheus. Remember, the lady we just saw, she was about to kill Orpheus, so he says, as punishment for that, the husbands tattoo the wives. That's the Greek logic, because tattooing is always... Similarly, for Xenophon, he associates tattooing with various strains of un-Greek debauchery. He observed that the Mosynopi, a tribe from Pontus is the Black Sea region, were brightly covered all over front and back, tattooed with designs of flowers. However, this tribe also practiced bizarre customs, such as fattening up boys on boiled chestnuts, so that they were practically as broad as they were tall. Moreover, the men wanted to have sexual intercourse in public with their mistresses, this being the normal thing in their country. I give you all these three examples to show you that tattooing comes right side by side with sex in public and fattening your children. Yes, it's completely obscene for them. Yeah, it's something really, really bad. Do you understand? So it's the same people that have these three incredible costumes. Can you imagine? They tattoo their women and they have sex in public. Ooh, yeah, but it's very, very funny to see this, you know, how this actually. We do, however, have a piece of Hellenistic poetry which was discovered about 20 years ago, called the Tattoo Elegy. And here, a man well, he says, if you don't leave my lover in peace, I will punish you by tattooing this and that on your back. And we all went like, ooh, that's interesting, because then he describes a very complicated, a very complex image of a mythology of somebody slaying somebody else. And we said we didn't even know that they were able to do this, and we have no other witness, no other text where they say we were able to depict entire mythological scenes. Now we know from the Scythian mummy that it's technically possible, but we don't know if anyone in Greece would ever done it. So of course this is all in the context of punishing someone, but he threatens to punish him with an incredible piece of art. And that's for us, I'm cutting here a bit, but that's the significance of this. So these detailed scenes would have required refined tattooing methods, thus implying that tattooing was well understood, though not widely practiced in Greece. So they must have known at least something about it in order to write this poem. These examples indicate that no broad generalizations can be made about ancient attitudes towards tattoos. While Greek authors took an overwhelmingly negative stance against tattooing, not all Greeks rejected the practice. Indeed, the multiplicity of cultures in the ancient world led to dissenting beauty standards. Hence, tattoos cannot be reduced to derogatory symbols. When voluntarily applied, they decorated and celebrated the body. As it's almost 6 o'clock, I will get a bit faster now. And we just have a look at Egypt. Please admire the Nile. And this is the tattoo I was talking about, where women, for fertility reasons, get dot pattern tattoos which expand into different patterns when you're pregnant. But I found this very interesting to see, and it's also preserved on numerous female mummies in one tomb. You can even say that they are painted on this female sculpture. We could of course argue that this is pubic hair or something, but these images we consider to be tattoos. And we know that Hathor, goddess of motherhood, was served by tattooed priestesses. So here we get into the cultic region, and they locate the tattoos on sexually suggestive body parts. So there's obviously something magic, something with fertility going on here. This is of course interesting. Again, don't try this at home. So we have a source where they say they even tattoo, the Egyptians even tattoo their babies. Again, we of course, we don't know whether it's true. We haven't found. We have recently found a cat mummy. So there was a tomb full of cats, but we haven't found a baby which had been tattooed so far. And now this is what they tell you to put on your tattoo when you try this bit which I told you about with a piece of texture. So put cloves on them, they disinfect, or white beads and some linen. So if you tattoo yourself the Egyptian way to disinfect the wound. Again, it tells you that it's a widely practiced technique if they already know how to heal it. Then we know from Petronius Satirica that there's also something you called decorative scars, decorative scarring, because he said you could never pretend to be a Nubian because the Nubians have the decorative scars and you can't fake those. Either you have them or you don't have them. There are still some cultures today in Africa who do that and who have them. And we have sources from Antiquity. I just mention this because it's not tattooing, but it's part of the same idea. And here you have the Capocratians, which grant their disciples inside the loop of the right ear. That's a Christian sect, and they also mark each other rather painfully, I don't think. Sorry to be rather quick now. So we have the mummy of a monk with a tattoo on his lower leg, where he basically says, I am Manichaeus, a disciple of Christ. So we know that these Christian tattoos go back a long way. And the rest I have is basically about Christian tattoos. Now you can see here this kind of cross sign. I'm running it because the amusing bit comes at the end, actually. So you have these Christian tattoos, where they put the Alpha and the Omega on and all these kind of things you probably know. Also very often the Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Now, what I want to end with, give me 3 more minutes, is Russian prison tattoos, highly offensive material, I have to warn you. So they, we had 3 volumes. A Russian prison inspector. So he had to travel to each Russian prison, so if I can't say the word, I should have talked about it. And he collected material. He photographed the most impressive tattoos. And he says that in the terrible plague, patches of tattoos, the obscenities of thieves' jargons, the criminal obsession and depraved notions of the structured society and social ideology get depicted. Now we have some, we have some ball here, that means God, and Mer means peace. So they use these Christian-looking words, but they're actually acronyms for Borg is I shall rock again. So the letters forming Borg, you can read as an acronym for I shall rob again. ¿Entiendes? Acronym. Y esta palabra significa God, pero es un acrónimo por voy robarte otra vez. So tiene como un código en estas tatuajes cristianos. El otro es esta palabra, significa significa only shooting will reform me. So let me find a few matters. But there are also some which use proper Latin. These are the really dirty ones now, and they have one is called Malo Moriquam Foidari, which is I would rather die than be dishonored. Again, don't use this in prose composition class. It's not classical Latin, but it's a warning against snitches, so you should not betray, you should not spy on the other inmates. And it's also, funnily enough, it's the motto of the famous Beta family from Italy. So it's also from a noble family, the motto. So this exists in Latin. The other one is Hac fac ut felix vivas, do these things in order to live happily, which is not attested in classical sources. So they seem to have invented that themselves. As you can see, this has been transferred somewhat. Here again, you see how they use other bits of Latin. So here you've got one who speaks lots of languages. And the second one, of course, is everything that I own, I carry with me. And Varnik et me ama, goodbye and love me and things like that. So it's I can't explain that, of course. And factum me memoris, I shall do this so that you remember me. Again, it's amusing in a way to see how they use Latin, this rather learned medium, to also denote permanence. I would also assume that not everybody, of course, can read it, so they always can explain what it means. So here, the tattoos are like a service record. You get certain kinds of prison tattoos. You can even, if you watch CSI Miami or whatever it is, the series, they can always identify the dead body if it has tattoos, because the tattoo gives you the cultural context of a certain prison or a certain tattoo. So here's something very similar happening. It's just amusing to see that it goes back into subculture again, the Latin tattoos and tattooing in general. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's already 6 o'clock, but I think we have time to take 1 or 2 little questions if you want.
Preguntas en español. Preguntitas.
Inspiration for any tattoos? Araceli?
Yes. I think you know an epigraphical example in inscription, Greek inscription of Invitado. There is a man who goes to a temple. He has a tattoo in his forehead, and he wanted to be removed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh.
it's a very pretty example.
Yeah. And the dream, it's very nice. The dreams.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. It's a good one. Yeah. we have a papyrus where a slave has run away.
Yes.
And they just say he has a tattoo in a strange language. So we'll wonder, it can't be Greek, it can't be Latin, so it must be the third culture which tattooed him. But also interesting that comes up as his description. So you have it?
Yes, I would ask you, it would have to do for the age of the woman, the hidden woman that was
I think they said she's between 33 and 38.
Oh,
Very young.
Well, no. She had very good skin, as you know. She's interesting for various reasons, because they if they're frozen, they're of course better preserved than the Egyptian ones, so there's more flesh. And they put them into these MRT scans, which is fascinating, and they figured out that she actually died of cancer, and that she had medical procedures done. So she had an operation. I mean, don't ask me how. And then they figured out, because she has all these copper pieces in her body, she must have inhaled from a copper plate opium a lot to numb the pain. So she's, for several reasons, she's really fascinating. And they keep finding these mummies because, due to global warming, permafrost fall. So we find all these mammoths, but we also find the permafrost mummies now. So I think there's a lot to come still. And Russia, luckily enough, Russia now also has the archaeologists to preserve them. So when they found her the first time, they didn't do much with her. They just kept her frozen until they had MRT scan. This is quite interesting.
Yes.
Hello.
Ladies first, sorry.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it was very well done, very colorful. But my question is that I think that we have mentioned the trading culture with the tattoos and all this, but also there were so many slaves, trading slaves everywhere, and also so many mercenaries everywhere, that I think that Greek people were so fascinated by the fact that they were all tattooed, that it was also raising them many questions about that, like mark of distinctiveness for this for people.
Yeah, it's a very good question, because so she said there were so many Thracian soldiers and slaves in the ancient world. People must have seen a lot of their tattoos and started to think about them a bit more. And I think one of the quotes I gave from Zudo Plutarch, where he kind of wonders why would you possibly do this. I think that shows you the process where they try to understand the other, you know, that they realize it doesn't have the same value, cultural value, as it has for them, despite the fact that they will only encounter them as slaves, as you say, and things like that. So I think, yeah, it's quite funny, ethnology in the ancient world, it's full of prejudices, and I have a rather amusing lecture about ethnosexuality, which is what they think how other people have sex. So if you think about the French, you know, I mean, because it's already in Europe, you don't think about Britain, you think about the French. But then in the ancient world, you have these people living in India who have dog heads, and then they start thinking about how do they reproduce, like humans or like dogs. And I mean, I shall stop right here. But it's very amusing that they also have this idea of how culture spreads, and they see themselves as the center. So what they do must be the right thing to do. But they start a bit later in antiquity to realize that there are other customs and there must be reasons for them. So that's very much what you. There were some more questions in the front.
Yes, but you almost already answered it, because it's the sense that as far as we have mentioned of the tattoos in Greek and Latin, mainly in Greek, it's basically associated to foreign cultures. So we can have a deduction from that, a conclusion, get a conclusion from that, that in the Greek culture itself, at least in its oldest phases, tattoo was not an habit, was not something, more or less what you have said, yes. And as far as we have also paintings, at least in ceramic, in vases, and also sometimes in sculptures, where some horrors have been preserved. As far as I can remember, we did never find a man or a woman in archaic or even classic times who has tattoos. So it was probably a foreign.
Exactly. So it's un-Greek. So it's a mark of the other as well.
Exactly.
I mean, you can see this very early vase. I showed where justice and injustice are shown. Injustice is tattooed. So the bad, whatever it is, the other the bad is.
Two little questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Do we know anything about the tattooing techniques in antiquity? And are we always sure about whether the ancient sources are talking about tattoos or scarification? Can we always be
I start from the back. They use
the Nubians and
they use the same word for branding and tattooing. Sometimes when it's a very long, when it's several words, we think it must be tattooing because branding gets a bit complicated after about 2 or 3 letters. I mean, branding is what you do with oxen or something. It's usually just one side. And already with the foo, with the thief, that's almost a bit too difficult to brand because you need a 3-part set or something like that. We know that the slaves of the fleur-de-lis, the French slaves, but that's just again one branding. Yeah, it's a very good question. We can't always tell. The examples I've used are the ones where we think generally it's tattooing. Remind me of your second question. Sorry, what was it?
techniques.
Oh yes, techniques. We know the most. Well, we know nothing about Scythia. We don't know how they did it, but it's extremely elaborate. We know the most from Egypt because we find it in the tombs. They put them there, and that was basically the bit. We have the utensils as well. The bit with the string where you color the skin, and then so the dot patterns. They really put a colored string under the skin, and the pigment stays. Yeah, don't ask me. That's amazing. But and the other one is it's a very long needle, and you put the pigment, but it's a rather thick needle as well. So it's not at all pleasant. I mean, even whatever. I actually I didn't show, but I have an image of that. But again, for these huge tattoos, we really wondered because it's quite challenging to do.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Pues un aplauso. Thank you.